Someone wrote this note. They were looking for answers to a problem. Quote, I've been taught that at death, we go to be with the Lord. Then it appears that we come back to the grave for resurrection to go back to be with the Lord. Then sometime later, we go to a new heaven and a mansion. This sounds confusing. Can you help me? I'll try. From Luke chapter 22, verse 42 and 43, we see the statement of the thief on the cross and Jesus' answer back to him. The thief says, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. Jesus prompted for a reply, and his reply does shed light on where the afterlife will take place and where it will be spent. Truly, I say unto you today, you will be with me in paradise. It appears then from this passage that the afterlife will begin at death and begin in a place called paradise. The Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, in Isaiah chapter 51, verse 3, it says this, And now I will comfort thee, O Zion, and I will have comforted all her desert places, and I will make her desert places as a garden. That word garden is also the word used for paradise in the Greek. And her western places as the garden paradise of the Lord. They shall find gladness, exultation, thanksgiving, and the voice of praise. What this reveals is that paradise is like a garden. There we will find gladness, exultation, thanksgiving, and the voice of praise. Revelation 2:7 says this, He who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who overcomes, I will grant the right to eat from the tree of life in the paradise of God. Here we see the tree of life is located in paradise, or garden of God. So paradise is a garden, perhaps similar to Eden, maybe. And paradise is an intermediate state. The story of the rich man and Lazarus also is an example and gives us some insight into this. In chapter 16 of Luke, there's a story of the rich man who had no compassion for a poor man. Lazarus, both men die. The rich man goes to Hades, while Lazarus was carried by angels to Abraham's side. Luke 16:22. The thing most apparent in this story is that in both places, the men have consciousness of what is going on, not only where they are, but other places as well. The question then is, what and where is Abraham's side? The phrase Abraham's side is nowhere else used, but it is a beautiful way of saying that God's people will be in the presence of Abraham, the father of the faithful. In Judaism, paradise referred to the abode of the righteous dead, paradise with Abraham's bosom. Abraham's bosom is not a synonym, however, for paradise, but the verse notes that Abraham is there, suggesting that the place is a place for the righteous. The fact that the rich man looked up and saw Abraham does not mean that heaven and hell will be within seeing distance in regard to each other. While that may be true, though, a better argument would be that heaven is simply the place where God's presence is, as opposed to hell, the place where God's presence is not. For purposes here, it is enough to simply show that during this afterlife experience, which takes place immediately at bodily death, there is conscious awareness. It should be mentioned that while Hades can simply be the grave, in this passage it seems to refer to the place of the unrighteous dead. This would seem to go along with Jewish thought of the time after death preceding the judgment. 1 Enoch 22:11 backs up this thought. Quote, "Here their spirits shall be set apart in this great pain, till the great day of judgment, scourging and torments of the accused forever, so that there may be retribution for their souls." Daniel 12:2, which is a verse that's I often hear when referring to afterlife. And it says, "And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." This is not referring to soul sleep. From the time Jesus' resurrection played an important role in the early church and held great significance. The Second Temple understanding of afterlife was understood as two-part experience: a disembodied period of rest with God, paradise or Abraham's bosom, followed by resurrection of the body. So in conclusion, most Christians hold to some belief in the afterlife. Yet, for most, the belief is a disembodied spirit existence in heaven or eternity. While the biblical record speaks of a time of rest after death in paradise or Abraham's bosom, the biblical record does not stop at that point. The biblical record and Second Temple theology held the position of bodily resurrection. After a period of rest with the Father in paradise, when you're dealing with worldviews, every community and every person must make their own choice. In the dark, even if there's a persistent rumor of light around the next corner, my worldview and the original audience should never be filtered out of the interpretation of literature, biblical literature. Nor should the Jewishness of Jesus and Paul and other biblical and extra-biblical writers be filtered out. The Second Temple worldview, the worldview of Paul and of Jesus, was one of a two-part afterlife experience. The first stage was disembodied spiritual existence to be followed at the end of time by a full-body resurrection. The final frontier for man is not life after death, but life after life after death. I hope this helps. Thank you for listening. And remember, not knowing what you know may not be true is worse than not knowing at all. Thank you very much.